Hello, everybody. Willie Mayette from Jazz Edge. I want to welcome you to Office Hours. Before I begin, I just want to remind you all that if you're joining me on YouTube or Facebook Live right now, that you end up getting lower resolution audio because it's just the nature of streaming, all right? But my users, my members of Jazz Edge that are joining me, get higher resolution audio through Zoom. If you're interested in getting that higher resolution audio, just come back and sign up for a free account over at Jazz Edge. You can join in using that Zoom link. All right, so office hours is the time when you can ask me any music-related questions. We're on for about 60 minutes. So go ahead and chat in your question, or if you're joining me on Zoom, go ahead and chat in your question, or go ahead and unmute yourself. Who has a question? And while I am waiting, let me just let you all know that there's been an update to the site. Let me show you that right now. If you take a look on the dashboard now, you will see, well, first of all, there's a couple of things that have been updated. Number one, let me show you this. So you see now there's a new homepage. You could just go ahead and click on this and go ahead and get the trial to Jazz Edge Core. This is 11 hours of content. Quite honestly, if you're interested in learning the piano, this is a incredible deal, all right? So you can get in 30 days, take a look at 11 hours of content. You end up getting some backing tracks, some sheet music available as well. So I would definitely suggest go ahead and do that. And then once I get into my dashboard, let's see if this is going to log me in the right place here. You'll see that Jazz Edge Core is now live and active on the site. Just as a reminder, I know it's a little bit small. You'll see here if you have full access or limited access. Okay, I have full access in this test account. Just go ahead and choose any lesson right from the drop down, and there'll be a little asterisk next to the lesson when you have completed that lesson. If for any reason you don't see it, just make sure you come down here to Jazz Edge Core, click on Show. I'm going to hide the trifecta because I don't need to see the trifecta since I have Jazz Edge Core. Just take me back to the dashboard, and hopefully this should take me back, and there we go. All right, so, okay, so back to our questions. Let's see, you got a question here. So Gustavo asked, a question on rootless voicings. For a dominant 7 sus4 chord, besides replacing the third with the fourth, do we usually change anything else from the regular voicing? No, that's really it. So you could do like the sus4 just like that, okay? And typically a good way of thinking about a sus4 voicing, rootless voicing, is go down to the dominant 7th and create a major 7th on that note, all right? So if I'm trying to do C7 sus4, I go down to the dominant 7th, I create a major 7th chord, which is a B flat major 7th chord, and that gives me my nice sus4 sound. This is my 7th, my 9th, my sus4, and my 13th, okay? So pretty simple to be able to do that, and then you can change around those different ways of playing that voicing as well. So if I want to do another one, say on G, okay, so I go to the 7th, create a major 7th right there, and I get that. It's F, E, E flat. Okay, so that's how you create your sus4 sound. All right. Does that answer your question, Gustavo?
Yeah, because I saw it on 251. And then I found it odd that it was exactly, so the 5 was a sus4, so the notes were exactly the same as the 2. So exactly. That's why I was like,
right. So if I do D minor to G7 sus, then the C major. Yeah. That voicing is exactly the same for the D minor and for the G sus. Okay. Other questions? Who has other questions? Or are we going to be done early today? Bruce, all right, go ahead. Bruce, you have a question about contemporary chord progressions.
Yeah, my question is, and this is a non-jazz question, but I'm listening to some film music the other day, and it really touched me. It was really nice. Mm-hmm. And it'd be nice to kind of fool around and create some melodies with some of the more contemporary chord progressions that, say, filmmakers or whatever would use. Are there any like in jazz, you have your popular jazz progressions.
Sure.
Is there something similar to the contemporary world as far as common progressions to work with?
Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but actually that's what I went to school for, was film music composition. Actually,
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, when I was at Berkeley, I went to school for
right
film
up
music.
your alley then.
Yeah. Of course, I have to admit, in full disclosure, I haven't done a lot of that work. I'm in the more educational space. All right, so this is what I have found with a lot of film music. Number one, if you start to get into a very recognizable progression, then it starts to take away from the function sometimes of the film score. So if you're trying to create a scene, right? So you have a scene, like this might be, someone is in love, or maybe someone is running, or there's fear, there's excitement, whatever the emotion is that you're trying to capture musically. As you do a progression with that, it can start to kind of take away from that. So in other words, like, even if I wanted to say like, oh, okay, you know what? I have, there's a bad guy and he's going to do something bad. So I might think, oh, okay, let me go in minor. Let's just stay in C minor here. Now, if I start to do stuff like, I start to do stuff like that. It's like, well, that doesn't really sound very, film score-esque, because it's a progression. So a lot of times what you'll find is there's a combination of techniques that are used. One, you'll notice a lot of times that there's not a lot of chord movement going on, because the more chord movement you have going on, the more it's going to sound like a song, right? The more it's going to sound like, some type of progression. So a lot of times it might be alternating between one or two chords, or maybe even just staying on one chord, all right? So that's the first thing. The other thing is, you will oftentimes have more of a soundscape. Now, this is not the keyboard to do this with, but if I put on a voice here and I have like, let's see here, let me try and get something that's like, okay, so this is like a synth pad kind of thing. So if I was scoring something like an 80s film, that would be perfect, right? Again, like I said, this is not really the keyboard for this. Let's see. Yeah, this is all going to sound very dated, all of this stuff. I'm curious if there's anything in here that's kind of interesting.
Well, one of the things that I was looking at when I was thinking of this is that I have a lot of really nice photos, because I do a lot of landscape photography of the Southwest. And I was thinking it'd be nice to kind of like put those together, make a movie, but compose my own music to it and play the music at the same time, showing the beautiful scenery along with that. And I was kind of like, that would be a cool project to work on. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So now what you would probably want to do is you'd probably want to layer sound. So you probably wouldn't want to just do one time. I mean, you could do it all in piano, but it's going to sound, all piano. A lot of times, a lot of film music is more, soundscape is the way that I think of it. So like here I have this sound.
Yeah.
Right. So now here, that's going to give you much more of a like, ooh, like, yeah, it's kind of mysterious and whatnot. So now what am I doing here? Half steps. But I want to kind of resolve it. I can go into that. You'll also find a lot of open, like open sounds like that.
Yeah.
So what happens is compositionally, you might be staying with one harmony, like maybe it's a minor chord, or maybe there is really no harmony. Maybe it's just like kind of like. Now, that gives me that kind of dark and stormy. And what I'm doing there specifically is half steps, right? Really getting in those half steps and really trying to dial in all of that tension. Now, if I want to do like kind of the Southwest kind of thing, I kind of think Aaron Copland, like, that very Americana, like. big open voicings. As I start to get my voicings closer together, like this, now I get, you know, it gets a little bit more dark and stormy. If I kind of come down here, and then if I do more pointillistic, which is kind of like more staccato. You know, so you see now that gives me that kind of vibe. If I do that up here.
That was the Dave Grusin, The Firm.
Exactly. Dave Grusin, The Firm, he did the entire score all with piano, except there was one like band tune in there. I love that film score. And he's even like knocking inside the piano and shing, like hitting the strings of the piano. So now obviously with a beautiful acoustic grand, you can do a lot more. But that's kind of like where your mindset should be. You want to be thinking about, well, what's the soundscape? What's the feeling? What is it that you're trying to evoke? So when you think about like the Southwest, you're thinking what? Like kind of big sky, you know, maybe barren, desert, you know, that kind of stuff. So you might have more of those like kind of like. And then there are certain techniques, like let's say I want to do like a love theme. I know doing like a large jump and then coming down. Right, so that's going to give me that like that longing. If I do like a thing in which I get very active and I have a raising bass pattern, that's going to give you. Right, that's going to give you a certain feeling there. If I do something like this. But now, again, that starts to get more progression oriented, so it might kind of take on a certain sound. So you might do something like, you know, you just keep like a set thing going on here and just kind of play around with moving the bass down. So that give you an idea?
Yeah.
So
because I was watching the Western Open Range the other night, and Michael Kamen did the score for it.
I met him.
And the opening scene was these beautiful vistas in Wyoming with this beautiful theme that was played, and it just added so much to the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And I said that, you know, I hate to think what a movie would be without music.
I don't remember who the composer was. Well, the couple of little tidbits I'll give you. Number one, I had a chance to meet Michael Kamen when I was at Berkeley. He came in and did a workshop, and that was really cool. He was a really nice guy, and he's obviously a very talented musician and composer. Aaron Schoenberg was asked to do a score as well for a movie. If I remember this correctly, maybe it wasn't Schoenberg, but I'm pretty sure it was him. And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll do it. It's going to take me about a year to write it." and then the director was like, "Yeah, no, we need this in 3 months." Film score, it happens very, very quickly. So what you'll notice is a lot of times some film composers will reuse certain things. Some people like have a whole problem with John Williams, which I love John Williams. I think he writes beautiful music. Some people are like, you know, they poo-poo him because, you know, he might reuse a technique. But, you know, when you're up, like you're going to write an orchestral score in like 5 weeks, and then you have to go and record it and all of that. You know, you don't have a lot of time there. And then the third little anecdote was, I forget who this was, the composer, but the director was, you know, the composer wanted to have music, and they were, you know, it was like a scene, like they're out in a, you know, the director was saying, you know, the music shouldn't go there because how would there be an orchestra there, you know? And then he's like, well, how would there be an orchestra if you're on a boat or something, right? So it's like, you know, you're absolutely right. Without music, a film would definitely lose something. But also, again, that whole idea of playing and resting, right? When you don't have music in a section, it's also very powerful as well. Or when the music, when you start thinking composition, like, okay, I'm not going to come in right away with something where it's like, like, oh, I just got hit. And you think like, oh, there should be a musical note there. It's like, no, it's not like, oh, and it's like, you wait a second in a character, and then it's like, then something comes in after the fact, and it's able to tie into that emotion. So it's very cool, and I think that's a great idea. Like, take your pictures and write a little score for it.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite composers, obviously John Williams and Elmer Bernstein, I think were two really, Academy Award winner, both of them.
Oh yeah, and then of course you can't talk film scoring without also mentioning Jerry Goldsmith. Jerry Goldsmith was like, he's the cat's meow. Take a look at Planet of the Apes. It's a very pointillistic score. Very, very interesting. And it's also very interesting when you listen to some of those older scores from like, the 90s, 80s, 70s, and earlier, before they had like all these synthesizers and whatnot, to listen to those scores and then hear how they would use things, like a trash can with a bunch of reverb and how they would use those to create those sounds is very interesting. Another one, oh geez, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The guy who did Rocky, the music for that, it's on the tip of my tongue. But there's an example of, that's a lot of actual progression. Gonna Fly Now. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but anyway, you listen to those and it's like, it's an actual song. And, to hear how that kind of feels in that vibe of that movie, it's interesting where it's like, you're actually playing a song, versus a soundscape. So anyway, some thoughts.
Thanks, Willie. Appreciate the help.
Gil, you had a membership question?
Yeah, this is my first year of being paying by the year, and I'm coming up for renewal. Do I have to? I use the credit card. Do I have to worry about anything?
No, what you could do is
automatically be renewed.
Yeah, it should automatically renew. If you go into your subscription area, if it says like Noble Piano yearly or Jazz Edge yearly, then it'll just automatically renew. And if for any reason it doesn't automatically renew and there's any problem, just write in and I'll be happy to take care of it for you.
Oh, great. And that while I'm here, you were just mentioning the change to the site. Has that already been done, or I just logged in and I just still see the trifecta? Do I have to do anything to change over to the? If you don't see, just go down here to the preferences, all right, and then make sure you see this Jazz Edge core. If you still don't see this, it might just be a cache issue, so you might have to just wait a little bit for the for the cache of the site on your computer to expire. Or what you could do is you could always go to your browser and clear the cache. Another way is if you open up a different browser that you don't log in on the site, you could see it that way as well. But whatever browser you're used to using, if you just give it 24 hours, the cache should expire. Oh, okay, thanks. I was just wondering if I had to do something, that's all.
Nope, no, that should be it. Joe, go ahead, an accompaniment question.
Morning, Willie.
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
With the new dashboard, does that mean that Piano Accompaniment Essentials is up and running?
It's coming. All right. I have the first exercise written out. I have not recorded it as of yet because obviously I've just been dealing with a bunch of other stuff this week. But yes, it is coming. So it's at this point, it's probably going to be next week before I'm going to be able to release that. And Accompaniment Essentials is going to follow pretty much the same vibe of TCI. In that we're going to do a new accompaniment every other week, right? So rather than piling on a bunch of stuff for you guys to deal with, it'll be one every other week. And then what's also going to happen is the accompaniments are going to start simple, right? I'm going to skew it more towards the rock pop side to begin with, right? Since TCI and Standards by the Dozen is very jazz oriented and very jazz based, the accompaniment essentials are going to be more, kind of pop rock kind of style to begin with, and then building up to, kind of more jazz and complex styles.
Good, good. Another question.
Yep.
You were talking to Bruce about soundtracks. How would you do like an ambient soundtrack?
Ambient, so now when you say ambient, I'm thinking again like those sounds of, let me see here.
I'm thinking like Brian Eno.
Yeah, it's probably like a lot of that is it's going to be all about the sound, right? So much of soundtrack stuff is about the patch or the sound or the instrument that's being used. And one thing I'd suggest you guys take a look at if you're interested in that. Now, let me warn you right up front here is that it's a little bit technical and it can get costly. But I got this Native Instruments software instrument. And basically what it is, and I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail on it right now. I am going to do a gear and tech Zoom meeting for you guys, like I said. So that will be scheduled soon. We can talk about it more then. But basically what happens is, in a keyboard like this, all the sounds are built in, right? Now, with a software instrument, all of the sounds are in your laptop or in your computer. You hook up your keyboard to your computer and you trigger the sounds off of your computer. Now, those sounds are just mind-blowing, the sounds that you get. I got this Native Instruments pack and it was $600, right? But I got strings and horns and all of these different patches and sounds that I could trigger, with my keyboard. And those sounds, like if you're looking for like those real string sounds, real horn sounds, they are actual samples. So you could take a look at them. It's Native Instruments, probably nativeinstruments.com, but take a listen to some of that stuff over there. And if you have questions on it before you go and, plop down a bunch of money on it, write in or, talk to me, during one of the live sessions and I can give you some more feedback on it. But it is definitely worth a look-see to take a look at some of that stuff. Again, if you're not technical or you get frustrated by technical stuff, I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying this in general for anyone listening to my voice right now. If the technical side of things, it like kind of, no, then I would stay completely away from that kind of stuff. And if you're interested in getting into that more soundscape, ambient kind of stuff, then probably what you would want to do is buy a synthesizer that already has those sounds in it. The benefit, though, of going with the computer and triggering the sounds that way is you end up paying a lot less. You buy one controller keyboard and you can have oodles and oodles of sounds, on your computer. So something to take a look at.
Wow, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Bill Conti. Thank you so much, Michelle. Yes, Bill Conti. Yeah, like he's another great composer. But like I said, like what's interesting is it's kind of like they're songs. It's not like a soundscape thing. It's a song. Gonna Fly Now, the Rocky theme. It's in all of the Rocky movies, and extremely recognizable. So it's just a different way of approaching. Putting music to a film. So,
he was born in Providence, Rhode Island.
I did not know that.
I just saw that.
I did not know that. Well, look at that, a fellow Rhode Islander. All right, that's cool.
On 13th April 1942.
All right. Jeez, it's a hell of a time to be born, too. 1942. Well, at least he was a kid. He didn't have to, he didn't remember all of that unpleasantness that happened in World War II. But that's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I like that. Let's see. Jerry had a question here on YouTube. Is the Jazz Edge chord piano the same thing as HSP chord piano? No. Homeschool pianos, chord piano lessons are, just basic. So let me back up for a second. Years ago, I created the core piano course. You can find that at Homeschool Piano, and it's really the only piece of content that crosses over between Homeschool Piano and Jazz Edge. So Jazz Edge and Homeschool Piano, Jazz Edge, No Bowl Piano, and Homeschool Piano all have access to that core piano course. Jazz Edge Core is a collection of 6 courses that are only found on the Jazz Edge site. No Bowl Piano members get full access to the first 3 and then limited access to the other 3. All right, so if I go back here to this, No Bowl Piano students have full access to all of these 3. And then limited access to these. Jazz Edge students have access to all 6 of these courses. Just a little bit about the courses. The 30-day playbook is the best place to start. If you're just kind of brand new to the piano or brand new to my stuff, it's a great place just to get into the playbook, and it kind of lets you suss out and kind of see, you know, is Jazz Edge right for you, or should you go over to Homeschool Piano? And just as a reminder, Homeschool Piano is, you know, for those students that are absolute beginners to the piano. It's a very step-by-step course, and it's kind of like a one and done. It's like all of the content for Homeschool Piano is done. New content is not added to it. Whereas No Bowl Piano and Jazz Edge continually has content added to it. Piano Essentials is all about your scales and all about learning your chords. Chord Essentials is 10 different exercises in all 12 keys. So 120 exercises in total, but those 10 exercises are transposed into every key, and those 10 exercises teach you about different styles, different chord voicings, different rhythms, and they're great to use as just kind of like to build up your stylistic playing. Like if you want to play rock, you want to play blues, you want to play jazz, well, you get all of that kind of in there. And they're also great to be used as intros and endings or vamps. Piano Accompaniment Essentials, this is all going to be about, okay, so how do we build accompaniments in the left hand and then bring in the right hand to make sense for the style that we're working on. So for playing rock, you know, we might be playing, you know, octaves and triads in different inversions, right? We might start to add in nines. We might start to fill out that left hand. Whereas if we're going to do, you know, like, you know, say a Latin, you know, it might be, you know, kind of bass line stuff. We might get into, you know, like stuff like that if we wanted to do jazz, if we wanted to do funk. You know, so all of these different accompaniments, and how does what does the left hand do? What does the right hand do? And how do they work together? That's what's going to be talked about in Piano Accompaniment Essentials. Confident Improviser is all about if you want to learn how to improvise. We start very heavily on the jazz side of things, and we will eventually be moving into, you know, more of the rock pop. Standards by the Dozen is all about learning jazz standards. If you're not interested in jazz standards, there's plenty of other lessons on the site. You know, Beatles tunes, you know, other pop rock tunes, 80s tunes, you know, funk stuff, gospel stuff, blues stuff. So there's all of that in the site as well. But part of Jazz Edge Core, I brought in Standards by the Dozen because most students want to understand how to play those standards. And even if you're mostly interested in like, hey, look, all I do is rock and pop, learning standards are really, really important because, you know, if you're a rock pop player, you know, Gil, you know, you could chime in. You're a perfect example of this. You know, you go out and you're playing rock pop, or you're doing wedding band stuff. You're probably going to have to do a cocktail piano hour as well. And that's where you want those standards. You want to be able to play those. So Jazz Edge Core is available for Jazz Edge students and partially available for No Bowl Piano students. And the idea behind Jazz Edge Core is that you could literally focus on these 6 courses, and then you have pretty much everything that you need. And the reason that I organized all of these into Jazz Edge Core is because one of the challenges of the site is it's very easy to get sidetracked by the next shiny object, and it's also very easy to become a kid in a candy store. When you have 800 plus hours of lessons that you can take a look at, that is a ton. excuse me, a ton of content. And with all of that content, it's very easy to get sidetracked. So this way, Jazz Edge Core keeps you very focused. Okay, you can work right on there. And like I said, in case you missed it before, these graphics will change as you finish a lesson. So when you finish a lesson, there'll be a star here, and that lets you know that you finished that course. Each of these lessons will have a little asterisk next to them when you finish them, right? So it makes it very easy for you to come in here and say, oh, okay, oh yeah, okay, so you see that one right there, that chord essential tips, right? I already finished that lesson in this account. So there's a little asterisk there, but I got all these other ones that I have to do. So it's an easy way for you to be able to quickly, kind of on a bird's eye view, be able to see exactly what you've done and what you still have left to do. Gustavo, on a 2-5-1 into minor, does it make sense to reharm the 5 chord to a minor instead of a dominant? I had a C7 sharp 9 chord on a lead sheet, and a root 3 show was rubbing a lot against the sharp 9 on the melody. Yes, so I changed my left-hand shell to a C7 root 3, to a C minor 7 root 3, and it sounded better. Okay, all right. So should I think of this as a reharm, or is it just a change of the voicing to use the sharp 9 instead of the 3rd? Yeah, so it's the latter. You're changing. So if the melody is this, right, and the underlying chord is C7 sharp 9, when you're just playing that root 3 like that, you're absolutely right. It is going to rub against it. And the reason for that is you don't have enough data in the chord right now. There's not enough of the chord sound to make that sharp 9 not sound so tense against that natural 3rd, right? So this would still be correct, right? So for a C7 sharp 9, we would play our root 3 and we have our sharp 9. But like everything else in music, you know, shells are not a 100% guaranteed, hey, you play a root 3 chord shell, it's going to sound, you know, perfect 100% of the time. No, it's not. So this is where you could go to a root 7 chord shell or bring in the 3rd as well and do a root 3-7 chord shell like that. If you change it to minor like that, you can do that, but you're not going to want to change the 5 chord to a minor. As you start to fill out those chords, you're going to want to keep that natural 3rd in there. Reason is that sharp 9, they're looking for that tension, right? You want that tension, right? So when you move it to the minor 3rd, even though it sounds good for the root 3 chord shell, ultimately, as you start to flesh out the arrangement, you're going to find that, oh, wait a second, that doesn't sound good going to that minor 3rd, and you're going to, you know, want to flesh it out and maybe add in the 7th, maybe add in flat 13, you know, sharp 11, you know, that kind of stuff. Make sense, Gustavo?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Gil.
Yeah, you hit a chord. Yeah, you know, you hit a chord when you were talking about into the more tunes, because I did real well 20 years ago when I was, you know, had a steady job with the standards, just playing mostly standards and very few of the tunes past the 40s, the 50s, and some of the 60s. But I know you gig too. You find I have an older drummer that I work with, and he's always been, before the pandemic, he was pushing me always to get more into the more modern tunes like the Beatles and I guess 80s and Billy Joel. Do you have somewhere on your site where you have a suggested list of tunes that I should get into?
Yeah. So
when I go back to playing.
Yeah. So when you go up into the site, this menu up here is chock full of information. There's a lot of information in this menu, and it's real easy to kind of lose some of that. So if you go to lessons and you come over here to lesson style, right? So if you want like more of that rock stuff, I would click here in the rock stuff. And then also, if you're just looking for song lessons, they're right up there. But then when you get in here, what do you see? Blackbird, right? Break on through the other side, Bridge over trouble, right? So you get all of these, you know, don't know why. That's a little bit more modern as well, right? So if you go up into here, this is not a suggested order. Why? Because quite frankly, each one of these lessons is self-contained, right? So if you're interested in learning Break on Through to the Other Side, you just go right to that lesson You don't need any other lesson. It's all right there. The only thing you're going to need, not you, Gil, personally, because you already have the skill set, but if you're just getting started, okay, well, this might be a little bit advanced if you're getting started, right? The chord structures and whatnot. That's where you'd want to go through Jazz Edge Core, especially Piano Essentials and stuff like that to get all of that down. But each of these lessons can be done in any order that you want, right? Because they are all self-contained. Blackbird, self-contained lesson. You got the whole arrangement. I teach the arrangement. You have the sheet music. So that whole song lesson is all done. It's all self-contained right there. Does that answer your question, Gil?
Yeah, because I noticed my audience changing. I mean, the new middle age is, like I'm in my 60s now. So to me, the older set was, they were the older set. And now I'm becoming part of the older set, but to keep up, yeah. I have to look at I'm thinking now, I have to look at the audience when I go back, because a lot of them are going to be like younger than me or around or in the 50s, I guess the 50s. And I have to look at the middle age in a different way. Instead of looking at them as being like older, I have to look at them as being younger now. So, I turn on the radio and I notice that the oldies stations are playing 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, there's 80s lessons in there. Like what I consider, and one of the criteria for putting a song lesson on the site for me has always been, is this a classic song, right? So is this something that kind of is a standard of whatever style? Like you take Blackbird, that's a Beatles standard, right? Where there's some other Beatles tunes that, like Yellow Submarine might not be a standard for most people, right? Maybe it is, right? But the point is, there are, not every tune in the Beatles collection is a standard that everybody knows and loves and wants to hear. Blackbird, that's a perfect example of a song that has been done in numerous different styles by numerous different artists. So it's a standard Beatles tune. So the lessons that you'll find on the site, I believe they span all different, age brackets, right? So even if you have someone who's like in the 20s or 30s, they'll listen to Blackbird, and even if they don't necessarily know what the tune is, they can appreciate that tune, right? But you're absolutely right. I mean, you got to play to your audience, and one of the challenges is, especially with like new music today, some new music today, depending on what it is that you're going to be playing, sometimes it's just one chord, right? And it's really more about the beat and the groove, and that doesn't really lend itself to to piano. Whereas other tunes lend themselves much better, So the song lessons that you'll find on the site are all song lessons that like render themselves extremely well to piano.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You got it. Any other questions? Let's see. Niall asked, hey, Willie, I'm learning Misty right now. Can you tell me, is it, 1, advisable to do melody analysis to help remember it and not get lost like we do for chord and song form? Yes. And in fact, there's an analysis of the chord structure, but if you want to analyze the melody as well, that's perfectly fine. One thing I would definitely suggest is at least analyze the beginning of the melody, right? So in Misty, right? So it's like kind of outlining that major 7th chord, the 5th to the 3rd to the 7th, right? So then that way, if I'm going to go, right? If I'm going to move it into another key, into F, in the C, right? So it makes it a lot easier for me to be able to move that song around if I analyze at least the first part of the melody. And then at that point, then I can start to use my ear and figure out the rest of the melody. Or if you want, there's nothing wrong with going through the entire melody and just kind of analyzing the entire melody and figuring out, how does the melody relate back to the key. When it comes to analyzing the melody, I analyze the melody back to the original key versus to each individual chord. Then he said, and if so, too, do we just analyze the melody off? Oh, there you go, off the key. It's written in the lead sheet. So I have as E flat major. So I analyze the melody notes off the degrees of the E flat major scale. Yes, exactly. All right. So you analyze the melody based on the original key, not to each chord. Okay, because if you did it to each chord, that would be extremely difficult to be able to memorize. Typically, what I'll do is I kind of do sometimes the hunt and peck method, to be completely frank and honest. I will memorize the progression, but then the melody, I'll get the first part of the melody and I just kind of like figure out the rest of it by ear from there. Not necessarily the best way of doing it. So if you want to like have a more solid way, then you can analyze the entire melody and it'll be a lot easier to transpose. Marilyn, you have a question.
Oh, yeah, I'm mute. Yeah, I've been practicing the pentatonic scales and trying to get them all keys. Apparently there isn't one for B flat, or am I missing B? And I can't figure out any fingering for.
Yeah, the fingering. So there's definitely there's a pentatonic scale for every key. So B flat major. So I do 2, 1, 2, cross under 1, 2. Right. The pentatonic scale. Look at it this way. You're almost not going to be using 4 and 5 except when you're getting to the end of the scale. Right. So it's going to be mostly these 3 notes. That scale, and also while we're on this topic, the half whole diminished scale and whole half diminished scale, those as well. You're going to use mostly 1, 2, and 3. So that'll kind of give you a good starting point. So for B flat, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then I go to 3, then 1, 2. Minor. Minor is a little bit easier. I might actually even start with 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. See how I'm crossing underneath? Another trick that I like to do is when trying to figure out the fingering for the scale, rather than starting from the bottom note and going up, start from the top and go down. Because you might find that the fingering is a little bit easier. Like, okay, let me start with my middle finger. That makes sense. Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, I could do that. 3. Okay, so maybe 3 isn't the best idea. Well, what if I did 4? Okay, now that's interesting. Starting with 2. All right, so I could kind of play around with it, and sometimes coming down the scale makes it a little bit easier to figure out a better fingering. For B major, some of these you're going to have to do 1, 2, 1. But now let's talk about the function of these scales. You're usually not going to be just running. You're usually not going to just run that scale up and down like that. You might, but a lot of times, you'll play like. You'll be playing sections of the scale, so you're able to move your finger position. I'm curious here. Yeah, there's going to be virtually no way that you're going to avoid being able to put your thumb on a black note. You're not going to want to do that with your pinky. That's going to be really awkward. So. That one actually is not that bad. 1, 2, 1. That one feels the most comfortable for me. So 1, 2, cross under, 1, 2, 3, then.
Yeah, I just probably wouldn't play that one as fast as some of the others.
Yeah, I mean, some scales in certain keys, you're going to be able to play better than other keys. And, if you take a look at some players, like, you take a look at Floyd Kramer, Jerry Lee Lewis, a lot of times those guys just played in C, and they're not the only ones. You'll find some players play in certain keys because what they can do, they can only do in those keys. Like if I want to do. Well, that's kind of, it's a little tricky to do that in the key of B, right? Whereas doing that in B is a little bit more challenging.
Yeah. And on the black keys, you just have to use 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, I suppose. Just it's all.
Oh yeah. Like there, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Yep. Yeah. So remember this: when playing a major scale, you never ever use your thumb on a black key. Okay, so when playing a major scale, you never use your thumb on a black key. But other scales, yes, you might have to end up using your thumb on a black key. So that's going to be major and obviously natural minor as well, because natural minor is just a major scale shifted, right? So those scales, you shouldn't be using the thumb on a black key. But on some scales, yeah, you'll have to use your thumb on a black key.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Replay will be up shortly after we're done here today. I'm gonna have to go pick up the kids, so worst case scenario, the replay will be available within an hour or two, Lloyd. The other thing too is, since I'm streaming this to YouTube as well, you can always go to the YouTube channel. Like if you want to see it like bam, 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 right now, you can go to the YouTube channel. And then it'll show up in my channel, because it is available there as well. You can also go to the Facebook group as well, because since I'm streaming it to the Facebook group, you'll see it listed there. So while you're waiting for the high definition audio to come up, you can go there and check it out as well. Let's see, James asks, what is your opinion of Hanon exercises? I think they're great. I think they're great. And I think what is great about your question is, you said, what's your opinion about Hanon exercises? And we always want to take a look at that term, exercises, meaning that it is an exercise, right? So it's not necessarily music, it's not improvisation, it's an exercise. And as long as you look at Hanon and you're approaching Hanon and utilizing it for what it's designed for, which is finger independence and dexterity and strength and that, then yeah, I think that they're fantastic. I did a lesson, full disclosure, this is a very old lesson that I did. Still, the sheet music is there and the video is there, but it's like the video is like kind of low res, but there's a lot of great information in there. It's called Hanon Mastery. And what I did is I took the first 10 Hanon exercises, showed you how to play them, but then also did like some kind of musical ways of making them a little bit more musical. So if you're interested in Hanon, you can check that out. That's at the Jazz Edge sites. All right. I got time for one more question. Go ahead, Ronald.
Hi, Willie. Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Hey, Ron.
So it was interesting you were talking about noodling for the melody, and it struck me because you've said that before. And it seems to me that so you don't seem to rely on your melodies by memorizing it intervallically, like taking the time to just intervallically lock it down. So then every time you do it for the next 10 years, you know exactly the melody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was wondering in the song The Way You Look Tonight, the D flat major, right? I was wondering why harmonically that moves to the C dominant, right? And I was just going over and over, and I was wondering how you view it harmonically.
Let's take a look at it here. When you look tonight, let me pull up the lead sheet for this. So we'll all be on the same page. All right. You're talking about
in the bridge, the fourth measure of the bridge. The fourth staff.
So the only D flat we have is here, right? Right. So the bridge goes to A flat, right? So
the fourth, the last staff before it turns around to the head of the song.
Right here.
Yeah, there's a D flat major.
Yep. So
right.
remember,
So I was wondering how you think of it harmonically. Why? See, things to me, I like when things fit into the puzzle of moving the fifths down and how the intervals all move, and the harmony to the tonic, to the one. And then I like to respect the tonal centers when they change. So this one changes, obviously. It moves to the D flat major, then to the G minor, and then to the 5 chord of the tonic.
Let's analyze again, right? So remember, the bridge of The Way You Look Tonight goes to what key?
A flat major.
A flat major. All right. So how does D flat function on A flat major?
It's got the 3, it's got the 11, it's got the
well, I mean, just in terms of like, is it a 1 chord, a 2 chord, 3, 4, 5, 6? Like, how would it function diatonically in A flat major? So let me ask it a different way. Let me ask it a different way. If I'm in the key of C, just to make it simple, that's my 1 chord, that's my 2 chord, my 3 chord, my 4 chord, 5, 6, 7, right? So in A flat, I have 1, 2, 3, right? Where are we going? So
yeah, the 4 chord that's the 4 chord
exactly
of the A flat major. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yep. So it's the 4 chord in the key of A flat. And then what's interesting is this. It's going to G, right? So a lot of times movement by half steps, by thirds, fourths, and fifths, those are our typical movements, right? But then nothing says that we can't move by the devil's interval. Do you remember what the devil's interval is?
Tritone, yeah.
Right.
Sure, yeah. You know, I realized that. That I knew. But the thing was, I accept the tritone motion, right? That's been repeated a lot. But it was just going to that 4 chord from the 1 sharp, right?
From the 1 sharp. You lost me on that.
No. I'm sorry. Okay, no. So just going to the 4 chord from the 1 chord, right?
That's it. Just going from the 1 to the 4 chord.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's amazing how these combinations start to like even when I was practicing a certain arpeggio the other day, and I was instead of playing it like before, I would mostly just go up and down slowly to learn it. I decided this time to start with playing the chunks. So it's like if you played a C major scale and you played the first three notes together, and then you played the other 4 notes together, and then you walked up the keyboard doing that, practicing those shapes.
Yep. The
hand shape first, and then arpeggiating it.
Yep.
It's so much easier.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. You know, I wonder
Thanks,
too
Willie.
here. Yeah. I was wondering if that would work. So the other thing you could do is you could do an interpolated 2/5, and I've talked about that before, and you can do a search for the word interpolated, I-N-T, interpolated. And basically what you do is you play G7, then go to G minor 7, and then that would work there. So
very nice.
So
gorgeous. Yeah. Now I've been playing there. I like the bite of playing the D flat dominant chord there. That's how I've been making the motion myself. I don't know why, just for my ear.
The only problem you're going to have is that melody note, right?
The D flat 7 chord, right? Do the Rootless version.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to the D flat 7 is great. And then what you could
hear
also
you hear that twang to it.
So changing the quality from major to a dominant, absolutely. That's fantastic. The other thing you could do then is also pedal the C underneath the G minor. So.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
You know, so pedal that C underneath the G. All right, so I gotta answer this question real quick. This is from Niall again. Forgot to ask about Sweet Georgia Brown for a stride version using the root 3/7 in the left hand. Okay, or too thin sound in your opinion? Yeah. So you were asking about. right? So it's got Georgia Brown up here. All right. So yeah, there's really so many different things you could do. I mean, like now, obviously you would have to practice this. And so, you know, you could do that kind of stuff where you rootless chord. You could do that. So hit the root, hit the rootless chord, go to the 5th rootless chord. You got to practice that, right? The other thing you could do, you could go root, and then rather than doing rootless chord, you could do like kind of like just the block chord, and that gives it a little bit. You know, it makes it sound less jazzy. It sounds a little bit more less tense, right? The other thing that's kind of cool is this kind of thing. This is stretch though, so figure out if that works for your hands, right? So root 5th, and then I'm sorry, root 3rd, 5th, 3rd, but separated by a 10th. So. The other thing you could do is, sometimes you could get away with that. Just root 7th, 5th, 7th. Okay. You could also do root 5, 5, 5. All right, so you can play around with that as well. The other thing that's kind of cool is like even just doing this. You play the E7 chord, but you just play root and then the rest of the chord. You could also do this kind of thing. That one's a little bit easier to get down versus, you know, that whole thing, you know. Like I would even need to practice that as well in order to get that down well. But you know, you could try some of those ideas, and that would be, you know, I think that would fit the bill. If you're looking for that full sound, though, you got to get that. You know, you're really trying to get that bass sound down there. So that's going to take the practice to like really get root, chord, 5th, chord, that kind of stuff. Okay. Remember though, like when it comes to accompaniments, and this is going to be part of PACE, Piano Accompaniment Essentials, it's not just learning one accompaniment. It's like, you know, when you play, you might start with, you know, and then move out the accompaniment, right? So you don't have to just stay with one accompaniment, you know, even though it sounds quote unquote thin also has its place as well. Because like, when we're approaching the instrument and we're thinking about accompaniment, we want to have a range of accompaniments, right? So it's like we might want to have that. You know, something like that, where we're like just kind of like, you know, like playing heavy like that. Maybe we want disco. You know, like having all of those different accompaniments underneath your fingers, or at least, you know, in your ears and in your brain, so that you can practice them. That's how you really get that full arrangement. You want to, so I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, when we're thinking about arranging tunes, we're never just going to think like, oh, I'm just going to do one accompaniment. Not saying that you were saying that, but just, you know, to put it out there. We want to learn many different accompaniments, because the more accompaniments that we have at our beck and call in our hands, the more than we can do, right? So even stuff like, you know, even something simple like that, Alberti bass, like with a triad. Like a lot of times people might think, oh, yeah, that's simple, I got that. Okay, well, play it. And you're like, you're right, and you can't get it together, right? So like each one of those accompaniments, as you practice them, you really want to make sure you practice them and really, you know, work them over several songs, you know. And that's why, like in Standards by the Dozen, we do shells over all the standards. We do rootless chords over all the standards. We do bass line over all the standards, because that is locking in that accompaniment style for you over a multitude of songs. All right, so that's it for me for today. And Jude said, Willie, regarding your practice session video was, oh yeah. For any of you that happen to see, I did a little proof of concept last night on my other YouTube channel, like kind of like my hidden YouTube channel, which is not hidden. It's Jazz Edge, so you could probably find it. But I did a streaming last night with the band. So don't worry about going to find it. We're going to do it again. All right. But I just did kind of like a proof of concept last night just to see if it would work and how well it would work. And actually, it came out pretty darn well. I was really surprised at how well the audio and whatnot, how well it worked out. In fact, this is what I'll do for you guys real quick. I will find the video and I will give you the link. Just bear with me for 1 second here as I find it. And then you can take a look at it for yourself. There we go. So this was it last night, our little practice, 2.5 hours. And this is, yeah, I got to get rid of these bars in here. Yeah, why not? So. And then we got some different camera angles in here as well, so you can kind of. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, it is right there. Okay. Like I said, though, it is going to be, we're going to be doing more of that. So don't worry. All right. And then don't worry about writing in any comments like, oh, you got to fix it. I already know all the bars and all of that stuff that needs to be fixed on there. All right. So anyway, thank you all very much for joining today. And I will see you guys in the next office hours. All right. So remember, if you're not a member of the site, just go back to jazzedge.com. There's a free 30-day trial right on the main page there. So if you just go back to Jazz Edge, if you happen to be joining me and seeing this on YouTube or Facebook, just click on this free 30-day trial. And that's going to get you access to some of the lessons of Jazz Edge Core. But then it'll also give you the link to this office hours where you could join in on the Zoom call. And just as a reminder, when you join in on the Zoom, it's perfectly fine if you just kind of do the voyeur thing where you just kind of like, shut off your camera and shut off your microphone and just listen. But if you're looking for that more high quality audio, you'll get that through Zoom or through the recording. All right. So anyway, thank you all very much for joining me. And I will see you guys soon. All right. Take care, guys. Thank you, Michelle.
Welcome.